Good morning, everyone. You might notice my voice is a little more sultry this morning. I've got a little cold that's gone to my throat, but I think you'll be able to hear me this morning, and I have lots of things I want to share with you. My name is Reverend Dr. Alice Reid, and I am the spiritual leader here at the Centers for Spiritual Living as we host our Sunday celebration at the being the wonderful guests of the Baha'i community, and several of you are here this morning. Hopefully you'll be more that will be joining us for our breakfast later, so I hope that you didn't eat breakfast already, because we have a real treat for you this morning. So Grand Rising. Yes, that is a wonderful term that came up from the Caribbean that really means that we rise in the morning grandly to welcome the day and whatever it brings. And this month, as we have been looking at this theme of embracing the edge, we've looked at a lot of different ways to consider what this edge exactly is. I described it in the first week of February as this edge of conscious evolution, borrowing wisdom from Barbara Marx Hubbard and her beautiful book, Conscious Evolution. And I think we are on the edge of something new, something that's being teased out in the world. And sometimes it's challenging when you are on the edge of something, when the edge is calling you forward to something new. And I know that as we enter this period consciously, as we allow ourselves to really step in and lean into being what I've been calling this month Edgewalkers, as we willingly lean into that space, it can be tricky sometimes. What I know about being a edgewalker, and you know, there's many, I'm just using a fun phrase for that, but what I'm really talking about is people who are willing to live consciously, who are willing to see that all that is before them is not the full reality, that there's a deeper reality happening, that something else wants to be revealed before us as we step into challenging times. We know that living consciously, well, it requires us to slow down a little. It requires us to really be present. It requires us to take in what it is the world is offering to us. And what I have been witnessing is the world has been offering us lots of narratives, lots of and we're in this unprecedented time in the history of humanity when somebody has an experience on the other side of the world and we know about it like that. And we don't even have time to digest the information. And when we aren't conscious, when we go to sleep, I have been known to go to sleep. I'm sure none of you are sleepwalking through life. But when we're not conscious of that information that comes to us, it can be tempting to be very reactive, to receive it as truth, to receive it as something that we have to pay attention to. But as edgewalkers and people who are willing to live consciously, I'm going to encourage us to live as mystics. Now, when I talk about mysticism, I want to just get a couple things clear. Last week, I talked about the walk of the modern-day mystic, and we talked about some comparisons of mystics and how they have come to the forefront and had beautiful messages to share for us when the world felt very unstable. And the thing I want to get clear is that a mystic is not someone who is floating above life, who has special access to God that you don't, who is someone who escapes the world. No, a mystic is someone who understands that just because there's something going on, it doesn't mean that that's all there is. That there's something happening below the surface, that there's more to what we are witnessing and experiencing than meets the eye. And most importantly, a mystic is someone who trusts that love is the deeper, more profound experience that is trying to happen, and that it is more powerful than any fear that we might have come up before us. A mystic knows that unity is more powerful than division or discord, and that spirit is present even when we don't know, even when we're in that place of uncertainty or feeling like the world is unstable. And mystics are not protected from uncertainty. However, they are willing to be present with the unknown. And the beautiful truth is, you do not have to live in a monastery, be somewhere far up on the mountain in total silence and isolation. You do not have to write scripture to be a mystic. You just have to be willing to practice presence. Yes. You just have to be willing to be with what is happening in front of you, and to be willing to look past the condition, to look past the event, to draw from within what wants to be known by means of you. Because we teach in this philosophy that there's no God up on high. Dear beloved Dr. David Walker used to refer to it as the sky God. Yes, we're not talking about a sky God. We're talking about the living presence that is within each one of you, that is within all humanity. And when we live in turbulent times, when we live in this place of where we think things are the way they should be, and then they turn out not to be the way we think they should be, we have an opportunity to practice presence, to practice what I'll call modern day mysticism. So I have something I'd like you to consider as we think about being edgewalkers and modern day mystics, that the edge is unknown, and at that edge of unknowing is where we can listen together when we step into the presence. Because listening is imperative to being present, and to being present with what's happening in the world. And the edge of the possible is where we create together. And when we hear the word edge, it can sometimes conjure up a sense of danger, the big cliff we're going to fall off of. But spiritually speaking, the edge is not where we fall off. It's simply a threshold for us to cross over, a place for us to step into, to begin to let go of what we think we've known for what's possible. And while the world may feel like it's falling apart, and as I said last week, I don't think anyone's exempt. Even if you are navigating the news cycles with grace and calm, there's probably something happening in your personal world that is spinning you up a little bit. And it's all part of the teasing out of something new, some threshold to the greater yet to be that humanity is being called forth to. And as modern day mystics, as people who practiced spiritual living through consciousness, through presence, through spiritual practice, through being willing to look a discordant fact in the face and to step away from it long enough to see what it is that wants to be known by you. It is a very powerful place to be, and it is about an inner listening. And I know the world's loud. It's noisy. It's in your face. There was that old Seinfeld episode where they talked about close talkers, right? Then the character would walk right up to their face and start talking. Well, that's kind of how the world feels to me. It's a close talker, and it's in my face all the time. But what I know about us, and it's a big us, it's not just the people in this room, I know about people who are choosing to live consciously, is that we're giving space to something that wants to come through. And through the eons, we've had beautiful examples of holy ones, enlightened ones, who have lived in turbulent times, lived in a time in the world that they walked that was difficult and challenging, and we continue to have wars and oppression and people trying to, have power over other people. And I can't think of a time when we didn't have some place in the world where we were dealing with this. And across the traditions, we had mystics that we could look up to. We had Jesus of Nazareth, who spoke of loving one's neighbor no matter what, even in times that were challenging, when his community, the Jewish community, was being deeply oppressed and hurt by the Romans. He walked that space and held that space of love for humanity. We had the Buddha, who during his time sat beneath the Bodhi tree and stayed with suffering long enough until he could tap into a deep, loving, unattached compassion. And he could find the power in that compassion. We had Krishna, who invited action rooted in divine alignment rather than fear or aggression. We had Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of our movement almost 100 years ago, who taught us that consciousness, the consciousness that we carry within ourselves, shapes the reality that we experience all around us. And the early followers of the Bab and the Baha'u'llah held fast to a vision of oneness and peace for humanity, even in the face of violence and persecution. And there are many others, too many for me. I'd be here all day if I was to share with you all the amazing mystics and prophets that came before us. But they're all pointing to the same thing. They're pointing to the opportunity that we don't have to wait for someone else to come. We don't have to wait for the great prophet or the great mystics to come and lead us out of this place of darkness that we might be experiencing in the world. We can find that light right here within ourselves. It's completely accessible, and we access it in community. We reflect it to each other. We allow ourselves to pause, to trust sometimes the awkward silence, to allow ourselves to be so present that we catch that something else that wants to be born in this time. And this idea of what the mystics taught, there is a beautiful thread that runs through it. And for me, and your perspective might be different. For me, the thread that I see is love. I see this beautiful thread of love through all spiritual traditions. That thread might be joy or beauty for you. It might be peace or freedom. But there is a quality of the divine that moves through all spiritual traditions, and it's calling us to see it, to grasp it, to lean in, to allow it to lead us across this threshold that we seem to be standing on the edge of. And if we're going to be edgewalkers, if we're going to be present with the unknown, well, I think we have an opportunity to really listen deeply within ourselves. And listening, my friends, is not weakness. It's preparation. when we listen, it helps us to prepare for what it is that's ours to do, to walk out, to express as living, breathing expressions of the divine. If the unknown is where we listen, the possibility is where we create. And possibility does not begin with certainty. I'm sorry to tell you that. If you're certain about something, it's really hard to make space for a new possibility. And so these times that we're in require us to let go of some of the things that we know, right? I know that when I'm certain, as my friend likes to say, always certain, often wrong. But I know when I'm certain about something, when I'm sort of getting in this place of, you know the feeling when you sort of like, you're almost like you're arming yourself with knowledge. And it becomes the armor that you wear. Well, there's nothing wrong with wisdom. Wisdom can help guide us. Wisdom allows us to be curious. Wisdom allows us to understand that whatever we think we know, there's more to know. It's the knowing that gets us in trouble. It's the knowing that gets where we attach, where we begin to be unwilling to see something different. And if we want to create a world that works for everyone, which is a big, lofty vision for Centers for Spiritual Living, if we want to create a world that works for everyone, we have to be willing to let go. Because the world doesn't work for everyone right now. It might work for you, and it might work for some of your neighbors, and I use neighbors in a very global sense, but it's not working for all your neighbors. And if we want to create a world that works for everyone, we have to be willing to let go of what we think we know. We have to be willing to let go of the known so that we can listen deeply, and then we can step into a place of possibility and creation. I know it sounds like a big order, doesn't it? Like, what? I'm just going to have pancakes later. You know, you can have your pancakes and eat them too. You can absolutely hold these ideas within yourself and trust that whatever's trying to break through is going to break through, and you can welcome it through your listening. You can welcome it with the ways that you open yourselves to possibility. When you find yourself up against it, will you be willing to take a breath? Let's take a breath right now. Do you feel that? When you take a breath, when you pause, there's more openness. Something's shifting. And then after that breath is the time to listen. After that breath, it's a time for us to let go of you know, sometimes when we're living in uncertain times, it can feel like the only safe place is to withdraw or to control or to dominate. But honestly, those behaviors just keep us stuck. They keep us stuck in what was, and when we long or pine for how it used to be, well, we're stuck in something that no longer exists. And so taking a breath, listening within, might look like the opportunity for you to be the loving presence that is needed in the moment, and it could show up as being compassionate with your neighbor, whether you like them or not. It can show up as having patience in a disagreement when you don't see eye to eye with someone. It can show up as having courage in a conversation, not to attack, not to control, not to withdraw, but to listen and to be present. It can show up as generosity in your community. And these things, my friends, they may seem like sentimental ideas, but they are not sentimental. They're revolutionary. In a day and age when people are so wedded to what they believe and what they think, being compassionate, being a good listener, being courageous, being patient, these are revolutionary ideas today. And I believe they have the power to open us up to a greater level of being human with one another. Because if I'm not listening to you, if I've decided who you are before you even walk into the room, well, I've dehumanized you. I've decided you're something you're not. I have been reading a lovely little tiny book by David Hawkins. And David Hawkins wrote Power versus Force. He wrote the Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender. And in this tiny little book, it's called Being in the World and Not of It. And in this book, he invites us to see the bigger picture. When the world is a close talker, it's pretty hard to see the big picture. But if we can step back long enough to see the big picture, we can begin to remember that this flesh and blood that carries around our soul and our heart is really the smallest fraction of who you are. You are so much more than your perspectives, than your opinions, than someone else's opinions of you. You are the living, breathing model and opportunity for the divine to walk the planet as you. And when you remember that, it's easy to do that listening that needs to be done. It's easy to step back, to take that breath, to do that deep inner listening, to find out what it is that wants to come through you. The all of you and the more of you, all in one place. And that is what we experience when we walk the path of the modern day mystic. We don't have to know where we're going to end up. As many of you know, I have been dreaming about going to Spain and walking the Camino de Santiago, and I have planned to do it in September. And one of the things that the Camino teaches us is that we don't have to know or be able to see the end. We just have to be conscious of the road in front of us. And we don't have to have good weather. We don't have to be comfortable. Oftentimes the path is clear and sunny and beautiful and easy, and sometimes it's foggy and steep and difficult and rainy. But pilgrims continue to walk forward. And as I've read, sometimes as you're walking this path, you might find yourself saying, "What was I thinking?" But we continue to put one foot in front of the other. We continue to move forward, not because we know exactly how it's going to turn out, but because we trust the direction that we're walking in. We trust the direction that we're walking in is going to lead us to a greater good, to a more evolved humanity, to a more blessed world. And as we trust, we simply walk forward. We continue to walk side by side in community. We continue to support one another. We don't have to do this alone. We can do this together. And my prayer for us, as we continue to be awake and aware of what's going on around us, as we continue to move our energy within before we express, as we continue to presence ourselves in this day and age where we have this threshold that is inviting us to something new and something loving and something more beneficial, that every time we find ourselves in this position, we choose presence over reaction, that we choose imagination over despair or anger, that we choose compassion over certainty. Because that edge is not a cliff. I think it's an invitation to grow and be imaginative and be open to possibility so that we can embody love and face fear when it comes up. And so my prayer for us as Edgewalkers today, may we have the courage to listen. May we have the imagination to believe more is possible than what we can see. And may we have the steadiness to walk the path of uncertainty together toward a world that works for all, one step at a time. Thank you very much. And so, as is our practice, I'll lead us in a affirmative prayer. As I take one more cleansing breath, and I feel the openness within myself, I know for each one that we are available to Spirit, that we are Spirit in expression, that Spirit is moving through the world by means of our voice, by means of our seeing, by means of our feeling, by means of our thinking, by means of our heart. We are indeed the place where God experienced life firsthand within each one. And so I know in this beautiful Sunday morning, we make the conviction, if you will, to be present, to invite presence, no matter what we're experiencing in the world around us. And I trust for each one that as we invite presence into this now moment, that there is a beautiful guidance that comes from within, a welling of God consciousness, a welling of presence, the presence that can be known as love, the presence that can be known as joy, as peace. And I know all of that unifies us as we remember we are one human family, that whether I agree with you, whether I agree with others, I know we are one. And so this day, I choose oneness. This day, I choose love. This day, I choose unity. This day, I choose peace. This day, I choose freedom and power that comes from the divine. I choose to be the emissary for all these amazing God qualities. And I trust that as I walk this out, that each one of us walks this out together. That when I fall down, you pick me up, and when you fall down, I pick you up. And I know that it is the power of the divine and trusting the unknown that opens us each to the possibility of what wants to be created here on earth, right here and right now. And so it is with gratitude that I anchor this prayer, knowing that the power, the presence, and the peace is right here where I am, right where I find my feet. And I give great thanks for this. And together we anchor this prayer in the power and with the law of cause and effect by simply saying together, and so it is.